All right. There's a couple things that are very, very useful to find when you've got the equation of a line. And the two things that are going to be useful for us to find are the slope and the intercepts of the line. Now, there's a couple things that we can do. And one of the first tools that I want you to be able to use is I want us to learn how to use, or actually read the equation that looks like this. Y is equal to mx plus b. This formula, or this equation, is called the slope-intercept form of a line. This is one of three different equations that are really, really helpful for us whenever we're dealing with lines. I've already discussed one of the other ones. Slope-intercept, I can see that, is one of these. And if you've got something in this form, whatever that coefficient is on x, that's our slope. M is our slope, which is, of course, rise over the run. And this number b, this is where our line is going to cross the y-axis. Our y-intercept, so we've got our slope, our y-intercept is that point of 0 and b. So say I've got something with an equation of y is equal to 3x plus 5. Just at a glance, I will be able to tell that my slope is equal to 3. This is our slope. And our y-intercept is 0, 5. Just like that. Get two pieces of information at a glance. Now, if I'm looking at this, though, there's one other intercept I could get, and that's a little bit tougher. But the nice thing about finding an intercept is all it really means is that we need to plug in a 0 for one of our values. And in this case, if I plug in a 0 for x, I find my y-intercept. Well, guess what? To find the x-intercept, you plug in a 0 for y. So I know that my y is going to be 0. So let's figure out what that might be. Y is 0. Well, if 0 is equal to 3x plus 5, I'd subtract 5 from both sides. I'll end up with negative 5 is equal to 3x, and then I divide both sides by 3. And I'd end up with x is equal to negative 5/3. And that might seem like an ugly value. It's okay. Fractions happen. So I've kind of buried the lead. I think you can also tell one of our ways of finding our intercepts. And part of what we can do is you can always just plug in 0 for either x. If you plug in, and if you plug in 0 for x, you'll find your y-intercept. If you plug in 0 for y, you'll find your x-intercept. It's a 3. Fat pens don't have a lot of distinction here. So let's try another type of equation. And this is called a standard form. A standard equation, and I don't know why this one is called a standard and not the other type. These all have the form of ax plus by is equal to c. Now, this type of equation, it seems like it might not be very easy to read, but I will tell you this, they're actually surprisingly easy to graph because it is easy to find 2 points, and those 2 points are your intercepts. So remember, if you're trying to find your intercepts, you're going to plug in zeros. Plug in your zeros. And you're going to plug them in one at a time. You don't plug it in for both of them. Otherwise, you're going to end up with nonsense. So I'll show you what this is going to look like. So for example, let's take something like 3x minus 4y is equal to 12. And the nice thing here is I could say, let's solve for our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is where x is equal to 0. So to find our y-intercept, we're going to set x equal to 0. That finds our y-intercept. And if we think about what happens here, what happens when I plug in a 0 right here? 3 times 0 is 0. I'm just going to be left with negative 4y is equal to 12. And I can kind of do that one in my head. What happens when I take both sides of this equation and divide by negative 4? I should end up with y is equal to negative 3, but let's show you what that looks like. So 3 times 0 minus our 4y is equal to 12. And sure enough, this whole thing is 0, so that's just going to be minus 4y is equal to 12. I divide both sides by negative 4. And sure enough, y is equal to negative 3. We found our y-intercept, just like that. Now, next thing that we can do is we can find our x-intercept. Find out where this crosses the x-axis. So where it crosses the x-axis, everywhere on the x-axis, y is equal to 0. So to find this, I just set y equal to 0. So notice up here when I was saying to find your intercepts, plug in zeros, I couldn't do both at the same time. If I did that, I would have something that says 0 equals 12, and it doesn't. 0 does not equal 12. But when I set y equal to 0, take a look at our original equation. Negative 4 times 0, I will just be left with a 0 in that position. Once again, I could probably do that in your head. You could probably do that math in your head. Divide both sides by 3, and you'll end up with x equals 4. And sure enough, 3x minus 4 times 0 equals our 12. This whole term is equal to 0, so that says 0. So I'll just have 3x is equal to 12. And I can divide by 3. And I've got x equals 4. So finding the intercepts are fairly easy if you're using this standard form. All right, that's all I've got for right now. So I will see you in the next video.